I'm talking with Catlyn, who's a social one. So Catlyn, thank you for doing this with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And can you tell us a little bit about how you see yourself as a social one? You know, how you recognized yourself in that particular subtype and how you see some social one patterns playing out.
Sure. Well, when I first realized or had social one suggested to me, I did not like it at all. And it was actually my husband. It was actually my husband who pointed it out to me. I went back and I looked at the nickname for social one, which is rigidity, and I said, "I'm not rigid." And my husband gave me a look like. It was from there that I started trying to tap into the inner critic. And I realized just how much the inner critic has become white noise. I almost don't hear it anymore. It's just such a constant thing. I try and tap into it more and more and actually hear it now and try and hear what it's saying to me. So much so that I have given her a name.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I call her Agatha. And then I call her Naggy Aggie. And
I like that.
Yeah, and I try and that was my first attempt to try and separate myself from the inner critic and say that it's not me, it's a part of me. So there's that.
That's good. And can you tell us a little bit about what you mean when like your husband said you might be rigid? Like, how do you see yourself being a bit rigid in your life?
The things that I'm rigid about, it can be something as silly as the right way to put dishes in the dishwasher. It can be something really, really, silly things like that. And of course, to much bigger things like the right way to parent. But even that's, every child is different. And so every child needs to be parented differently. And trying to remember that even as I parent my own child, and hopefully future children as well. I've noticed that it usually, the way I experience rigidity, it's more like a psychological locking up or locking down, and I can't find that place that just lets everything happen naturally. It feels like I have to force things to happen a certain way. Yeah, and so that's kind of how I figured out what rigidity means for me. It's like something in my mind just locks up and just and I thought, and it's well, and I thought for the longest time that it was external pressure that I was feeling to make myself lock up, but of course that was projection. It's actually internal pressure that's making me lock up on something. And I haven't quite figured out what that internal pressure is yet or where it's coming from, but that's the journey, right?
Exactly. Do you feel like you sometimes spend time figuring out what the right way is? Like,
oh yeah, I love research. I love, to my own detriment sometimes, I love trying to figure out the right way to do things. I mean, when I was pregnant, I spent hours researching the right way to breastfeed, and I spent time researching the right way to schedule your baby's naps and the right way to help your baby fall asleep. And now, even now, I'm looking for the right way to handle temper tantrums, and I'm looking for the right way to address discipline. And to my own detriment, my father often reminds me, trust your gut. You have good instincts. Just trust them. And it's like, but I don't know how. But yeah, so there's that constant battle between,
and that makes a lot of sense, because I think ones can sometimes not trust their own natural rhythms. And like you're saying, you've got to figure out the right way to do it. And something comes in and tells you, okay, puts pressure on you from the inside saying, okay, I've got to do it this way. Otherwise it might not be okay.
Yep. I don't know how to trust the natural rhythms of life. And so I have to impose something on them to trust it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's said that sometimes social ones, maybe not intentionally, but they model the right way to do things for other people too. Do you ever see yourself being a role model or kind of taking the role of teacher, whether intentionally or unintentionally?
Yeah. I have noticed myself, especially recently, trying to create situations wherein I can be the mentor. For my job, I help people find their Myers-Briggs type, and that almost naturally lends itself to coaching at the end. And I love that part, wherein I get to kind of offer advice on how to further their personal development and their personal growth, almost to my detriment. Sometimes I spend way too much time and thought and energy, answering questions and mentoring and sharing information and being the teacher, to my own detriment, the detriment of my time, to my family and hobbies and other things.
Kind of spending too much time to sort of modeling the right way or teaching.
Yes. Yeah. It gets to be a little self-indulgent. Yep. At best, I'm teaching. At worst, I am indulging my own ego.
I love how self-aware you are, and that's the whole point of this. I have another question for you. Sometimes there's a tricky thing about social ones, in that sometimes people think social subtypes like to be in the middle of a group and feel really comfortable with groups. I've noticed sometimes social ones have a little bit of a different, relationship to sort of the social world or groups of people. What's that like for you? How do you relate to people, in terms of what you might think of as a social instinct, helping others or being part of a group or relating to others?
So usually when I'm in a group, I'm not comfortable until I know what the rules are. Whatever the rules of the group are, I'm always a little anxious until I figure out just what's, where the lines are, right? So there's always a little bit of anxiety that comes with it. I tend to put myself on the edges of the group rather than being right in the center. I really, my most natural place in a group is to be the observer, the watcher. And like just today in yoga class, I noticed myself, I'm not the teacher in yoga class, but what I try to do is I try and put myself right in her line of vision. And so, I try and be, if I can't be the teacher myself, I want to be right next to that teacher if I can.
Oh, interesting.
Or as close to that teacher as I possibly can. And, with yoga, if I can't do the yoga pose as illustrated by the teacher, I get frustrated with myself. If I'm not quite as flexible as she is, I get frustrated with myself, which is probably why yoga is very good for me, because there are many variations to every pose. No variation is better than any other. It's all about accepting what is.
So you're kind of learning in yoga and how not to put so much pressure on yourself to do it the right way, or a specific right way. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And what are relationships like for you as a social one? Is it easy to relate to others? What comes up for you in relationship? It's sometimes said that social ones are more intellectual and kind of, there's sort of a knowledge is power kind of sense. How do those things play out for you?
I would say that most relationships for me they're either deep and the person knows me incredibly well, or they don't really know me at all. It takes a long time for me to feel comfortable getting close to somebody. I've had people at work, for example, work colleagues, tell me that I don't have emotions, that I come off as completely cool, businesslike. It was a surprise to one of my coworkers that I actually got angry. I actually had to call her in for help, because I'm like, I said, I'm too upset. I can't handle this properly. Please come in. Can you? And she's like, you got angry? Yeah, I do.
Interesting.
I've seen pictures or videos of myself wherein I remember feeling incredibly angry in that moment, but on the outside, you would never know that. I look very still, and I wouldn't say poised, but just that it's that I will not express anger, and very, very minimal movement in my body whenever I get angry.
And is that generally your experience of anger that you hold it in? Like, how do you experience anger exactly? And how do you express it if you do?
It depends on the circumstances or the situation. Out in public, yeah, I absolutely hold it in. I do my darndest not to show any anger in public. With my husband, it's a little bit of a different story. All my emotions come out first as anger. And so like the anger has to be dealt with first before I can get get underneath to whatever emotion it is I'm feeling that actually triggered the anger. So we've had arguments where I'm lashing out in anger, and after the fact I realize, honey, I just wanted a hug. And he's like,
wow.
okay, yelling at me doesn't make me want to hug you. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
That's really clear.
Yeah. So it was pointed out to me recently that I have a lot of shoulds for everybody. I place a lot of expectations on people, and maybe that's often not entirely fair. They're not expectations that they accepted. They're not and so that's been something I have to navigate. That is it fair that I place these expectations on people when we never necessarily had that conversation? I really enjoy the chakras, and so I've been studying the chakras, and it's been interesting to see how that could overlap with social ones.
Oh, very interesting.
So I go to the chiropractor every 2 weeks, and I hold a lot of tension in my neck. It's always a big release when they adjust my neck for me. It's always a big release. And so the neck, of course, is the throat chakra.
Yes.
And part of the throat chakra is just giving voice to all of the things you're thinking and feeling.
Yes.
And so I've been trying that more, just saying,
That's great.
I'm mad.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds like there may be a way you're controlling things instead of just speaking them freely. Is that what it feels like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the head, as I understand the social one, the head suppresses the body, and they meet in the neck, and so that's where all the tension is, and that's actually where, just saying, I'm mad.
Very interesting. That's very interesting. Another thing that we teach in our Enneagram school is that there's a band of energy, according to Reichian therapy, that's about the social instinct that's around the neck.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, and of course, related to the throat chakra. So that's a really interesting thing. Thank you I'm glad you're studying that.